Good morning, everybody. My name is Larry Jacobs. Welcome to Monday. It is Monday, February, what is it, the 19th of February, and happy President's Day. What can I say? Okay, we're doing a show today with a teacher who, Dr. Maryann Hasso is my guest, and she's the author of several books on the subject of supporting multilingual learners in the classroom, which is what we're going to be talking about today. And she's a teacher, so this was a good day for us to do the podcast because she has a day off. Okay, and she's also up at 6 a.m. So I appreciate that. It's 9 a.m. here in Maine, and where she is out in Victorville, California. Okay, it's only 6 a.m. So, Maryann, I'm going to bring you on in just a couple of seconds. It's going to be a really nice show, and I appreciate you being here. We're going to archive the show over at ace-ed.org. That's ace-ed.org. That's the home website of our American Consortium for Equity in Education, which we are very, very concerned about. And if you go over to ace-ed.org, you'll be able to see all the things we do. Our magazine, which is called Equity and Access. All the podcasts are over there. Our Equity Awards program is over there, plus a ton of other news that our publisher, Maya Appleby, keeps up so that the people go over there do it. And by the way, everything we do over there is free for you, so please go over, check it out over at ace-ed.org. And without enough of me blabbing at 6 in the morning in California, for my guest, good morning, Maryann. It's Larry here.
Good morning. I just want to say thank you very much for having me on.
Believe me, it's my pleasure, okay? And let me give you a really good introduction here. Believe me, and I appreciate you coming on. I really do. You got some great insights. You're a high school English teacher. You've written, from what I can gather, at least 3 books, okay? You're a public speaker. You're an expert on multilingual education. You've been a college professor, and will probably be one again. And you also teach English, as I mentioned, but at Victor Valley, which is Victorville, California, Victor Valley Union High School District, which is about an hour and a half east of L.A. How was that for an introduction?
No, yeah, thank you. Yeah, that's exactly it.
Right. How long have you been teaching in Victor Valley?
It'll be 17 years at that district. Yeah. Wow.
And you're teaching English, right?
Correct.
Traditional English, but it sounds to me, and this we're going to get into this, okay? Describe. I'm just curious about this. Describe the Victor Valley High School demographic, because there must be a lot of kids in there of Latino descent, whatever the case may be. What's the demographics linguistically, so to speak, of the district?
It is mixed. Victor Valley Union High School District is in a rural, sort of urban area, so it is very culturally diverse. We have a mix of Latino students, multilingual learners, African American students, Asian American students. So it is very culturally diverse.
That's right. I got to ask you this. And I looked, because you just said something that struck me. I looked at a picture on the internet of Victorville, and it was it looked like typical. I've been out there, but never to Victorville, but out in the desert of California, east of LA, and it's pretty flat. It's desert-like, and the mountains are in the background. And you just said it was kind of urban, and I thought that was kind of interesting that you used the word urban. Does it have an urban feel at all? It looked to me like it had a fairly rural, small town.
Yeah, it is growing. But it is, it's very rural, small, but it is sort of, like I mentioned, it's a growing sort of, there is an urban feel to it in some pockets of it.
That's good. That's good. And I love that as California pushes east, as these cities along the coast push east into the desert, because I've watched that over for a long, long time now, how those towns like Victorville, I'm sure, have grown and grown and grown. I remember going out there in the 80s, and not to Victorville, but out to like Temecula and all that, and there was nothing there. Mm-hmm. And now I know these are big places. So I find it interesting demographically, these changes are happening over there. Okay?
Yeah.
And now, before we get into the nitty-gritty here, I just want you to say that I have it linked here to Rowman and Littlefield Publishing. But Maryann has written 3 books, and I'm going to just say the titles: Understanding and Improving How K-12 Multilinguals Are Taught, okay, supporting multilinguals, okay, research-based bilingual instruction, the impact of multiple modalities, I love that, in a K-12 English learner classroom, All right, and also the struggles of minority English learners, how learner feedback can improving the skills. They're all from Rowman and Littlefield, and you can go over there and check it out. What got you interested in all this, Maryann?
Are you there?
I mean, basically you're an ESL teacher.
The thing about my interest in this is that, number one, I started out teaching English learners, and I didn't know anything about it at the time. So I wanted to do research and investigation on it. And when I was doing my PhD dissertation, I was thinking of topics, and I'm like, this is perfect for me because this is my demographic. And so I started investigating, and I was really interested in the area because, you know, I was always told, you know, teach them English only, you know, that's it, nothing else, you know, when you're teaching English learners. But I'm like, wait a minute, this is kind of hindering to them because
they come stupid, actually,
Yes. And it's like, wait a minute, you know, these kids are coming from, you know, homes that they're comfortable in, languages that they're comfortable speaking in, and here we are trying to force them into, a square, and that's not what they're used to. And so I was trying to figure out, you know, how to sort of mesh, you know, how do we teach them in what they need to know to manage and navigate academic life, and then keep them, you know, comfortable, not losing their native tongue, culture, and whatnot. And so that's where my interest stemmed from.
Yeah, and how many kids do you teach on a daily basis? Are you the only ESL teacher at
30.
school? What?
I don't currently teach ESL, but now they sort of mix them in. So I know the students that are English learners and multilingual learners. So now I can kind of help them navigate.
And I hope everybody at the school district and other districts somewhere don't start reading your book so they don't so they do it right and get these kids that are in the same classes together and making it work. Okay, I mean it's really, really important. By the way, just so you know this, my wife was an ESL teacher for years.
Okay. Oh, that's wonderful. That's fantastic.
So I kind of know it. She doesn't do it anymore, but she did it for years. Okay, and that kind of she had kind of masters in reading, but it was an emphasis on ESL from University of New Hampshire. I can't remember how all that came about, but that was where her interest was, etc. So let's talk about this, okay? Because school districts across the country, it's not just California, not just Arizona, not just Texas. Okay, school districts all over the country are facing this challenge, okay, of teaching kids who come from another language. So what do school districts and teachers, need to do to support the multilingual kids in their classroom? And we're talking K-12 here.
Well, first of all, there is an inequity of curriculum for students. So they give, the highest quality curriculum, for the highest performing students, the English-only students. So we need to be able to make things accessible for everyone. Equitable assessments in a K-12 education is a pressing concern because, yes, it is. Students that are, of multilingual backgrounds don't get the same type of assessments as English-only students. A lot of times the assessments and the curriculum is a lot harder for the multilingual students, as opposed to the English-only students. Dual language teachers who possess expertise with multilingual learners and are often bilingual themselves also help. So when they're hiring, it is probably best to hire multilingual teachers that can not only understand the backgrounds of these students, but also communicate with them. Alternative assessment formats can help as well. So not giving students one way of doing tests or doing assignments. They give them different options. for completing things. They can do portfolios, they can do presentations, they can translate assignments into, so they have the English, they can respond in English and respond in their home language to showcase their understanding.
Yeah,
flexible assessment
I have to say this, language matters, but so does academics. Okay, they want to get the facts. Okay, it's that simple. Sometimes we forget that the language takes precedence over the academics when you're dealing with these kids. Okay, but that's not the case. Okay, just because you don't speak English doesn't mean you don't have a brain. Okay.
Exactly.
Yeah, it's that simple. But my question, and you may have even I don't know, but you may have even taught this in higher ed. Okay, how are we doing? And you teach at Victor Valley. Okay, when the teachers have multilingual kids in their class, let's say the history teacher, 11th grade history, has kids who have a heavy Latino background, Spanish, whatever, Portuguese. Okay, how do they come to you and ask you what's going on? How's their understanding of how to teach them just in your own school? And that's an example of every school in the country. School's no different.
Well, there's a lot of dismissiveness, to be honest with you. It's like these kids are failing. They're not doing the work. They're not doing, this. But I don't know, what is the teacher doing to really, differentiate the instruction to make things accessible? How to be flexible with delivering the assignments to the student or giving them options. So that's where I start wondering what the teacher is doing to help the student understand the material.
Well, that was going to be my question. What is the teacher doing, and do they even know what to do? That's another problem. We're asking people, and it's like, what it's like? It's like the pandemic when suddenly everybody had to teach remotely, and nobody knew how to do that. Okay? Right. We're just asking people to do something that nobody knows how to do. All right? And it's the same thing here, if I may. We're asking them to accommodate, which is important, their students who teach another language. But how do they even do that? Who's helping them? Or where did they learn that? Is anybody learning it? I can go on with these questions. Help me, Maryann.
At the district level, they do provide professional development for teaching English learners, but that also depends on, the type of the school. Are there a lot of English learners in this particular school? So what's happening is they're sort of sending certain kids off to other schools, and the other kids are at the highest performing schools. So they're trying to, it just depends on the school environment, but professional development, ensuring that the teachers are getting different strategies for helping these students.
Exactly.
So that's helpful, but also it is difficult, to manage, the behavior, the academics, and so our district is slowly sort of changing in how we deliver the professional development and who is delivering the professional development. Is it a person?
I hope you are. I hope you are in Victorville.
No, not there. Not yet, but I'm trying. But I am, sharing my expertise all over the country. So
well, you should be, and targeting home base, and then going further, because they got a PhD, who's written 3 books on the subject, okay, and you'll work with other school districts, of course, always, or speak at a convention or whatever the case may be, okay, but they've got to take advantage of this, and so does every other district, about what you do, what you bring to the table. I mean, it's very important, and again, I'm versed in it because of my wife's background. But to me, it's very important, and it's our responsibility in 2 ways, to the kids and also to the community, to teach these kids and understand that just because they don't speak English, okay, they are just as intelligent as any other kid. All right, and that's a real challenge, and it's a challenge, if I may, as the country becomes more and more diverse linguistically, for education schools to include this as a course, just a generic course, okay, for teachers on how to just go about doing this, okay, and where to turn if they have problems. And we've got to face that issue. And I don't care what state you're in; it's happening everywhere. Okay,
right.
And it's just an issue we have to take care of, because you always want your schools to shine, and the more kids we can get to shine, and these kids are capable of shining, the better off we are. Talk about assessments. I'm curious about this one. How are teachers dealing with assessments, which are usually, if I may, in English? How are they doing it?
So they're really not. They're just sort of still giving the assessments in English, and they're not like really, number one, providing flexible timing for assessments, meaning that students need time to process the questions and formulate responses in the language that is not their first. So
right.
That's
Absolutely.
number one. It's like, okay, you can't just give them 30 minutes to complete this test, because, all of that time testing, mumbo jumbo.
Yeah, I was going to say crap, but you can do mumbo jumbo.
Yeah.
That's okay. Yeah.
You do need to give them a lot of time to process the information. And then in terms of like revising the assessments, allowing the multilingual to reflect on their assessments and make revisions based on feedback. So if the teacher, gets their test back and corrects it and says, this is wrong, you should allow the student to look at that and make their revisions. That way there's some learning going on. So it just, and let them do it in English and in their native language. And it just helps them learn better and develop their language better.
If they do it in their native language, and let's get off Spanish, which is the typical one that we go, but there's Arabic, Chinese, you can go right down a whole list.
Yeah.
Okay. And if they do a test in a foreign language, okay, how is a teacher, just a typical teacher, a good teacher, okay, how are they able to grade it? What's the secret on that end?
Well, they can.
In other words, maybe I'm asking you. We're talking about multiple choice tests, essay tests. Where are we on this? It's hard. It's a hard question.
It is hard. So they can get an aide that's bilingual to help them grade the test. There are several translation apps or translation tools that they can use to help them, figure out what the student is saying. They can get a student aide to read the student's work and, help them grade the paper. But there's multiple ways of figuring out what the student is trying to say. I mean, we do want to, the main thing is to help the student learn and master English, but we have to help them sort of, be comfortable enough to experiment with English by letting them use both languages in their writing and reading and who they, their peers, who they're around in the classroom. But you can have an aide do it, and an aide that's bilingual if you're not bilingual. Otherwise, if the teacher is bilingual, remember is one of the biggest things.
But they're bilingual. It's interesting. The teacher may be bilingual, but there might be 5 languages in their classroom. And you're not going to find a what would be the word quintilingual person.
Yeah,
okay,
no. No, but you can, like I said, you can use aids, you can use translation apps, translation tools. You can give them different options for expressing their learning, like project-based learning. They don't have to do, something academic. They can draw pictures of what they're learning, and they can, show.
Good point.
Yeah, so.
Yeah. And I'm curious, I wrote this down as you just answered that question. I wrote down 2 letters, AI, artificial intelligence.
Yes.
Okay. And I'm curious and again, this is really starting. Okay. Although the experts are so far ahead of us, they're already in outer space, but we're just beginning all this. Okay. Have you looked at how AI is going to help this? I don't know if you have, but I'm just curious. It seems to me like it helps. It seems to me it's going to help everything else. It might as well help this. Okay. Have you looked at it? I don't know.
I have. I've tinkered with it. You can ask it to translate things for you easily. It'll translate in any language. you can, so if a student gets a test, or you're there, right?
Yeah, oh yeah, I'm here.
Oh, okay. So if a student gets a test,
I was just being
Spanish,
quiet for a second. Yeah,
okay.
You go ahead. I'm here.
If a Spanish or Arabic teacher gets a test, they can ask AI to translate things for them, and it'll translate, and then they can answer the questions. So I tell my students all the time, especially if they're struggling, to use ChatGPT, however way you need to use it to support what you're trying to, do in this class. And it's not cheating or anything like that. They're still having to think about what they're responding with, but they just need an aid to help them with, what they're trying to deliver to the teacher.
Learning how to use AI is no different than in math class 1,000 years ago learning how to use a calculator.
Yeah.
Okay?
Yes.
When calculators first came out, all the math teachers were going nuts. Oh, this is cheating.
Yeah.
This will never work. But you know it worked just fine. Okay? Because the world changed. Yeah, and it's the same thing with AI. Okay? It's not cheating because the world is moving in that direction. The kids have to understand how to use AI. And if they do have problems with English, they can use the AI as they grow up, even in their jobs, to help them along until perfect in English. Okay, that argument doesn't hold water anymore. Okay,
no,
teachers have to
doesn't.
understand that we use, like a good carpenter, use all the tools at your disposal. And my classic joke on that, there hasn't been ever somebody who said to an employee, I want you to make up a marketing plan for next year. Clear your desk. No one has ever said that in business. Okay? Mm-hmm. You use every tool at your disposal, and that's where this has to go. Okay, this is a sea change, but it's going to make life easier. Here I am, I'm proselytizing here about the AI. That's not my point. My point is that this works, and every educator has to understand that. But there's another part of it. Okay, and this is important to, I think, what you do, and that's culturally responsive teaching, if I may. Okay, culturally responsive curriculum. I'll say it this way: absenteeism is higher than ever in American schools. It's terrible right now, and it's across the board. Right? And one of the reasons is a lot of kids just aren't engaged. Now, a lot of it has to do with the pandemic, but they became less, because they got used to being at home. All right, but if you don't engage kids, okay, and especially kids with a foreign language, thinking what the hell's going on here, okay. My point is, where are we? When you talk about culturally responsive, Maryann, okay, and you also wrote into your social emotional learning, which I believe in 100%. Talk about how those things fit into teaching multilingual kids.
Well, we have to, kids. My parents were immigrants from the Middle East, but I was raised and grew up here. The one thing about the school system is that they've got to create, a welcoming classroom environment.
Yeah.
That makes the student feel supported, that included, but not making them feel like they are outcast. So implementing these strategies, educators can enhance the learning experience and outcomes for all students. Cultural awareness and sensitivity, we have to make sure that we are culturally aware as teachers and sensitive to the different, cultures that come through our classrooms. So educators are encouraged to cultivate cultural awareness in their classroom, putting up I put up pictures of different authors from different cultural backgrounds. And my students are reading, all that information, making sure you have curriculum that's sort of tapping into the different backgrounds of students. That's also helpful. I remember reading, I think Langston Hughes, and, at one point my students, African in background, they were just eating it, but like reading the material like crazy, but they weren't reading other, material from like, Latino authors or possibly Caucasian authors. So it just depends on how they relate to what's going on in the classroom. And just making sure that the students feel like you understand diverse cultural backgrounds and perspectives and valuing and respecting their cultural identities. And just creating sort of this home for them where they feel like they're welcome and inclusive and feel included. And then, go ahead.
No, you go.
Oh,
continue. Please.
I was just saying that higher engagement is achieved when students feel connected to the learning. A lack of truly culturally responsive instruction is a barrier to learning. Positive language, just talking to students in a very understanding way is also helpful. Incorporating multilingual resources, giving students the resources in your classroom, like books, materials, media. If you're using videos, use videos that are in their language or demonstrating both English and, their language. And then helping them, develop peer relationships with other students similar to their background or similar to, or mixing up the group so that there's a mix of students that they can relate to and
exactly that the kids who speak Arabic are having the same challenges as the kids who speak Spanish. Yeah, that's pretty simple.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Where are the Hassos from? You brought up there from the Middle East. Where are they from? Where's your family from?
My parents actually they're from Amman, Jordan. I was born in Yonkers, New York. So
which is a lot a lot of people compare those to Amman and no, I'm just kidding.
Yeah, so that and then my parents and then I was born in Yonkers, New York. I grew up in the elementary school system in Yonkers. And then we moved here to California and it was a whole different thing. So
wow. That's a lot of travel. Okay, from Amman to New York to California. I like the trek. That's a good trek, for goodness sakes. Have you been to Oman, which is supposedly, I've never been there. It's supposed to be a beautiful.
Amman? No, I have not.
It's supposed to be really a cool place. Yeah.
The history and the architecture. I haven't been there just because of the way the Middle East is right now.
Yeah.
My parents, I'm very sheltered.
Yeah. It is a little tough, but I'll tell you, Amman's supposed to be absolutely good. It's supposed to be a really cool city, okay? And good country. Yeah.
A lot of movies have been filmed there.
Yes, you're right. And so we've gone down a list here. I'm just going to ask you one last question here. Of all these things we talked about, what to you is the most important as a teacher starts to get multilingual kids into their classroom? What's the first thing they should do, in your opinion?
Get to know the students. That is number one. Like, develop a rapport with them and, and find out what their interests are, find out and try to sort of relate to that. That's the simplest way to sort of help them stay engaged, because the more interested you are, the more they know they care, I learned this the hard way. I had a student that was, she was struggling in the class, and she was kind of, a little argumentative in some ways sometimes. And then I found a way to sort of connect with her. I told her I started doing my nails at home, and I noticed that she does her nails too, her own nails, or she has someone. And so I was sort of asking her questions about those types of things. And right away, like, she started working, she started being more productive, she started, getting things in, and there was less resistance. That is the key thing.
Yeah, it's so darn important. Just build a rapport, get to know the kids. It's just it's nice stuff. Thank you for being here with us, Maryann. This is great. I've got everything linked up here so the folks can look at your books over at Rowman. How's that sound?
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for having me on. I really appreciate it, Mr. Jacobs.
First of all, you got to call me Larry. I got to tell you, whenever I work with someone down south, Alabama, Mississippi, Louisiana, the Southern, which I always kid them about, they always call me sir. That's a Southern thing. That's a Southern thing, and it's very polite and nice. I always said, no, you can't call me that. I'm not a knight. You got to call me Larry. Okay,
Larry.
So don't call me Mr. Jacobs anymore. You got to call me Larry.
Okay, Larry, I will not forget that. Thank you so much.
Well, so I'll say, to make a joke, thank you, Dr. Hasso. It's a pleasure to know you,
Maryann, but thank you. Yeah, it was a pleasure.
Thank you. Take care.
Thank you. You too. Have a great day.
You
Bye-bye.
too. Bye-bye. Well, that was certainly an interesting conversation. What a nice lady. That's Maryann Hasso, Hasso. Okay, Dr. Hasso. Okay, in her books, I have Rowman and Littlefield connected here. You can look up Hasso, Dr. Hasso, as the author, and they'll all come up. This is interesting stuff. Our world is changing, okay? And it's going to be a little easier with AI, I'm convinced. So check it all out. My name's Larry Jacobs. Call me Larry. This is Pre-K-12 Education Talk Radio. Happy President's Day.